Hi, welcome back to Peregrine. This is part 2 of my job seeking experience while living in Finland video. If you haven't seen part 1, I suggest you start there. I'll put a link up here and also down in the description. As a recap, in part 1, I talked about why I was even in Finland, how I was going about looking for jobs, what was making it difficult. And in part 2, I'll tell you about how I ultimately did find a job and sort of what's next for me, and especially actually for these kinds of markets where people are highly skilled but still struggling to find jobs to match their skills. So now let's get to how I actually found a job and how maybe you may be able to find. So I mentioned to a classmate at some point, a Finnish classmate, that I was having a hard time finding something. Someone I don't even know that well, but he just said, hey, why don't you try contacting my former boss? So I did, and this person said she was really busy, to keep checking back with her, and I did over several months, and eventually she just said to come in for an interview the next week. So that's how it went, and it was really quick after that point. But I had to be persistent, and there were a few companies like that I was in touch with several times over several months, and the others didn't pan out, but this one did, so it was good to kind of stay on top of it. The job was as a thesis worker, so that's when you work inside a company while writing your master's thesis on a topic that is interesting to the company. So that was a good way to, work and also work on my studies at the same time. And the company was a multinational corporation. So that was a good place because they did have lots of projects in English and other languages even. So they were quite open to somebody with my profile. So what really helped me was, again, the networking, also being open to something else than what I was looking for initially. Like I said, I was looking for design studios, design agencies, but those really were not working out for me. They were really restricted for language skills. So I'm glad that I opened it up, that I was always looking broader than that. And so I ended up in this international company. So these are always good places to look as well, because they do have more flexibility in terms of language. I hear that startups can be a good place to look as well. So this I encourage, looking into it, why not? And now, especially that I know more and more people in Finland, I know some people who have started their own businesses. So that could be also a way to go, is to actually create your own opportunities if you're not finding them there. I know that for me, I really was not finding the same quality of opportunities in Finland at the time, and that's why I decided to leave. I understand why other people decide to stay, even if the opportunities don't look that good at that time. I know that people, they like the lifestyle, and I mentioned also in previous videos some of the things I did like in Finland. People find partners, and so did I. It's just that I took him with me. But yeah, I understand why you might want to stay. It's just unfortunate that even if you're motivated and you have the degrees and you have even some experience from before, that you're not necessarily able to find a job that matches that. And for me, ultimately, I ended up leaving Finland because by the end of my thesis worker position, I had this sort of opportunity to stay on and maybe be a trainee and continue at that level. But I wasn't a trainee. I already had years of experience, and that really didn't work for me. And I actually had job offers on the table in France and the Netherlands, and I knew that made a lot more sense to me than to stay in Finland and try to make it work in a place where the opportunities I had just were not at my level, and the opportunities were also so restricted. So that's why I ended up leaving. Even though I had a job, it was not a job that was going to really be at my level for much longer. So I decided to come back to France. And again, Nordic Diversify, and I'll put a link to this as well. They had a very interesting collection of small interviews with non-Finnish women, and it was really grim to hear their job situations. People living in Finland for years and struggling to find a job or a job at their level. And I know that these aren't the only cases. There are people who are doing better, who are thriving, and that's good. But I hope that number can really grow. Because for now, kind of from the outside, as someone who has been there, it's not really encouraging to go back. All right, so kind of to finish up, what are the solutions, to this issue? Because clearly you have people who are in Finland and who are looking for jobs, whether they have moved there to study or maybe to follow a partner or just with dreams of living in Finland, and they're having a hard time finding. But what's important to keep in mind is that there's also a need for the companies and for Finland overall. So I looked at the numbers, and currently there are about 18,000 people who move to Finland each year to work. But in order for the economy not to collapse, Finland needs about 34,000 people to move. to Finland each year. So that's almost double that. So there's a strong need on Finland's side as well to attract people or keep talent, like people who come there to study, for instance. So there's really incentive for both sides to kind of change their strategy. It's encouraging to see that Finland actually has such a need for skilled workers to come in to support the economy. So it shows that maybe things will move, if nothing else, by need. And also it helps that when I'm having conversations with people, they seem to be kind of aware of the issue, or to see some of the talks that I mentioned, to see that they're happening and people are talking about it. Sometimes people in government, so that also feels like, okay, maybe things are moving, maybe things are improving. And so I do find this to be, optimistic, or, a sign that things are changing. I'm not a social policy expert, so I don't know exactly what needs to change. But clearly there are several actors here where the mindsets and the policies and the ways of working do need to move. So for people coming in, there needs to be more willingness and more motivation to learn Finnish. That opens many doors in terms of culture and being accepted and getting jobs, clearly. And I know that it's difficult and it is hard when people have been telling you that it's impossible, that when you try to say a few sentences in Finnish at the market, people switch to English. Like, all of these are messages day in and day out that discourage you. But I would really encourage working on that. Personally, of course, I like studying languages, and I know that's not everyone's case. But I think that if you move somewhere and you're interested in the place, it makes sense to also lean into the language and get into that as well. Then you learn even more about the culture and also meet more people, get more job opportunities. But at this point, it's still not necessarily enough. I know people who have managed to learn Finnish over the years. It's not the majority of the people that I know, but I know some, and they are doing well enough to work and communicate effectively and intelligently. But some of them are even still struggling to find jobs to this day. And for companies and governments and universities also, there needs to be more encouragement and more support for learning Finnish, and also more patience and understanding for the fact that people won't be there on day one. And also understanding that when people speak Finnish that is imperfect, they are still understandable. I work with people all the time who speak English with accents, with some mistakes here and there. They're still understandable, they're still professional. And so it's not as common in Finland to hear this kind of Finnish, but that's something that needs to change as well. Again, I'm not a policy expert, so I don't know if it looks like subsidies, but I think there's also a need for mindsets to change individually. But that is such a slow process, and policies do change faster than people's opinions. So if there can be like a move for companies, for governments, also for schools, to help with the language learning, that can definitely drive things along. But yeah, it stays something that is in my mind. I keep my eye out on the market, and I really root for my friends who are still there and who are trying to make it work, or people who are starting to build some success, and I really hope that it continues. And I hope that at least some of the tips that I give today can help you if you're on your way or you're searching right now. All right, so that's my experience looking for jobs in Finland, and I don't mean to make it too pessimistic. Like I said, I know some people who have learned Finnish. I know some people who are even happy with their jobs and the careers that they're building there, but I do see still a lot of shortcomings. And that's why, I'm not there currently, but who knows for the future. So please let me know in the comments below what your experiences have been, whether it's in Finland or elsewhere. What are some of the hurdles that you have seen, especially if you're living in a country where you're not native? And please like this video and subscribe to hear more from me. I'll be talking about more of these issues, whether it's in Finland, in France, or elsewhere. And yeah, by the way, if you have suggestions or things you want to hear about, don't hesitate to let me know as well. Again, in the comments. Thanks for stopping by. See you next time.